This is the Cedar Creek Church Living It Out podcast, a midweek reminder where we discuss key takeaways and principles from the weekend message to help you live out the truth that you matter.
Welcome to the Living It Out podcast. I'm Marna Ward, and I'm here with Andy Rechtenwald, winner, champion, extraordinaire.
Feels great.
Welcome to the podcast.
I'm so excited to be here.
You're on the circuit.
I am.
Just in case anybody also takes part in morning prayer, we just booked you solid today because that's what you do for champions.
Yeah, I reached out to a lot of different local news stations. Nobody was really interested in that, but I did do the Cedar Creek circuit.
We are very interested. So congratulations to Team Jandy.
That's right.
For their win. My understanding is that this was a trophy taken back. There were some, we won the first 2 years, and then last year there were some, voting irregularities or something. Oh.
Yeah, I mean, the total vote count didn't really look great for Ben and Barr, but we let them keep the trophy, and this year we just left no doubt.
Oh, my word, you guys. I love it. So this weekend, obviously, is a ton of fun. Campuses had games and food, and the lobbies were completely decked out. Certainly our guests were, too. I saw lots of football jerseys.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of fun like that. And with Preach Off, we get a lot of questions, actually, we ask ourselves a lot of questions about Preach Off, right? And so how do you prepare? What do you love about it? You said this is one of your favorite weekends.
Oh, yeah. This is my favorite weekend of the year.
Oh,
and it's so weird because I love Easter and Christmas. But it's just it's so much fun. It is so much fun.
Yeah.
And you just get the whole weekend is just fun. You get to do fun the whole time. And honestly, I love the jokes and the competition of it.
Yeah.
And it's just different. It makes church different. So the preparation though, the way that I prepare is I don't. If something funny happens, I wish I was like Josh Whitlow.
Yeah, because he preps.
Yeah, my teammate. Now I'll give it. I'm gonna say this year I was way more prepared than he was, and he would tell you the same thing. Because I really You
heard it here first.
We lost last year,
Oh
so
yeah,
I was
you're
very,
right. Yeah. Okay.
But the preparation is very minimal. You can only do so much. You don't know.
Right.
It's not. Some people think that they think that we're lying to them.
Yes.
Do you really not see the verses?
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm
No, really.
This would be 4 years in a row of us compulsively lying to people about what we're doing. You don't know the words no, we don't know anything except for what we do know is they tell us
Mm-hmm.
last year we did quarter 1 would be a no God passage, quarter 2 would be a find freedom, and discover purpose, make a difference. This year it was the Torah was the first quarter. I didn't pay attention to the categories. I'm not going to... I can't prep with that.
I can't
God,
even.
find freedom, discover purpose, make a difference. That makes sense to me. We can do bottom lines based on
Right,
those
we can
categories.
kind of think it through a little bit.
Not the other stuff. So
no.
No. But so what we would do is Josh and I have a document. I don't know if he's shared on it anymore, but we have a document that has sample bottom lines, and then I would put stories in there. Josh he does a thing every day where he journals a fun memory of the day.
Oh, yeah.
I bought the book. He recommended it. I did it for a month, and I have too many other things that I do that I don't want to. At the end of the day, the last thing I'm thinking of is I want to journal.
Yeah, it's the 1 line a day thing, which is fantastic if you guys are doing it. But I'm the same way. I can't.
No. By the time I'm in bed, I'm not.
I know.
And I'm usually putting the kids to bed. I'm not thinking okay, now I can decompress.
I know.
When the kids
Josh
go to bed,
is so
I'm going
good
to bed.
about it, though.
Yeah,
oh man,
thought for the day.
Yes.
So I do, if I remember, if I'm thinking, and it's usually the month of. That's when I start going okay, now I need stories, and I'll pay attention to things that happen, like the story I told about Easton and Ruby asking about where babies come from. That literally happened 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So I was like, that's going to be great for the preach off, writing it down.
Yeah.
And then of course, anytime a kid throws up. Not anytime, but when Ruby threw up on the plane, I was like, that's going to happen.
Oh, there are some just in general, that's going to hit a message at some point. You just know it is,
That's
so
true. Yeah.
I love it. So you are as competitive as Josh or not as competitive?
It's a different type of competitive.
Okay. Because Josh is sort of known for his, he'll win. I should say it this way. In a message before, he has very honestly said, I used to and even still feel I still want to do anything to win.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right?
That's why I did what I did this year. Not the first time I mentioned the pregnancy.
Which we'll get to.
But the 11 o'clock, I was like, well, I got to do it again. We won. So, yes, I'm going to do that. I think... So we have different types of competitive, being competitive. So during the service... I tend to be the one who I wanted to throw Ben and Barb under the bus several times for using their phones. Like I was very much in favor of saying we don't have our phones up. There's a cheat sheet. And I was like, Josh, I forgot to do it. I was like, Josh, you have to say something. And he's like, all right, maybe I'll do that. Whereas I'm like, no, we have to. That will earn us points.
Yeah.
But then after like Saturday night, I'm positive Josh lost sleep after we lost the 5 o'clock service. I was upset. I went home and I'm like, dang it, what did I do wrong? I'm thinking through, like, I went too long in the story.
Yeah.
And I reviewed tape. It happens. But I went back and watched the backup tape. We did a backup taping on Wednesday. I went back and watched that, and I was critiquing myself as well. And I sent the tape to him and asked him to review it. And he's like, I might watch, I'm not going to watch it. So he is when he loses. I'm just consistently competitive, especially for the pre-off.
Okay.
But he probably lost sleep and
I love it.
Fasted or something.
I love it. I do think that is the fun for all of us in sort of pre-off is obviously the format and some of those things. To your point, we get a lot of questions about like the compulsive lying to people as if, as if we're like, no, really. I've been on the verse side of pre-off and I promise we have not shared them. So if you're wondering too, At the Movies was very similar. Lots of
I had no clue about
there was
any
a
of the
small
movies.
group of people who knew the movies. And so it is some of those kind of, I don't know, like we kind of live for that stuff where it just makes it fun and exciting and different.
Yeah,
it's
and we would
different.
have to be, me, Ben, Barb, and Josh would have to be some of the best actors ever, because you can tell when we look at a word and we're like, what? I didn't have that this year. I was blessed. My words were perfect.
You did have pretty good words.
The one I told the story about, I think it was the throw up story that I told Saturday, but I was talking about how he hadn't eaten, and all the words were about food. It was like spork. I don't remember what else. And then the only one I had that was weird was a Sharpie, and I was like, I told Kayla to get a Sharpie out and write it down. But Josh had tape measure, and he was just like, I'm not sure what to do with that. We wouldn't throw a service like that just to act and pretend like you know. But I did have several people like, you can tell me, you can trust me.
Tell me.
Yeah, I'm not going to tell you, even if it were happening, which it definitely isn't. We don't know anything. But
right.
I wouldn't be like, yeah, I'm going to tell you, but nobody else. No.
So let's talk about the commercials that were during pre-op for just a second. Like, my favorite was not the actual commercial. Well, it kind of was, but when it went into part 2 and it was like, if you had a lawsuit and the eagle cry at the end. Oh my gosh. I was crying at the end.
Yeah. So we see the commercials, when did I see them? Probably a Saturday afternoon. I don't know. And one of them we had from last year was the, Camel Crack one.
Camel Crack
and
Growth Track.
Yeah,
it always makes an appearance.
Like
that makes an appearance.
And it still gets incredible laughs. We did that one, which is, I'm proud of that we did that commercial. We did that one and the series promo for Get Me Out of Here.
Yeah.
The Camel Crack one is just so gross.
It's so awful.
2 different straws and
so awful.
Gosh. But that they did with the Germex one.
Doritos and the Germex. Yeah.
Every time it switched to the brothers-in-law part where it's like, huge cash settle, people would lose it. It was so good. I was very proud of that.
Oh, it was. It was so much fun. So I think, for us, again, the pre-off has a ton of fun elements, and we'll get to a little bit of why we do it that way. But before we do, there actually was a game yesterday. Like, aside for the pre-off, there was this thing called the Super Bowl. And so are you a fan? Game, commercials, food, what, like
Great.
all of it?
Yeah, all of it.
Ooh.
I'm a big fan of all of it. I don't follow NFL all the time because I'm a big baseball fan.
Yes.
And I've said this before. There are 162 baseball games every year. And I, as an Indians fan, I watch the majority of them. It's a lot of time. So I will work and watch, but I mean, I used to work for you here. You remember me. I'd have my iPad out, I'd have the game on, I'd be sitting there writing the Living It Out.
Yeah.
And stuff got jacked up probably. But
and you sucked me in. Like, I ended up like following the Indians for no darn good reason and was like texting you, and it was so stupid. It was like, what is happening?
And then
like,
they broke my heart. That's what they do every year.
They did break your heart.
Every year they break my heart. Didn't even, so by the time football, even college football, I'm a Penn State fan and don't have a lot of reasons to cheer either there. But the funny part is I was a Rams fan when I did follow football. I started rooting for the St. Louis Rams when Kurt Warner won the Super Bowl back in, I think it was 2002 or something like that, against the Titans, and I started cheering for them. And then, but again, after 162 games, I just don't have any energy for sports, and especially because I leave very upset and disappointed. So I'm like, I'm not gonna.
Interesting.
But this year, it would have been great to be a Rams fan this year.
It would have been great. So. Yeah. And we had some people on staff that were great Bengals fans. I have to admit, so how do you approach like a super fan and their team lost? Like I had this moment today where I felt like I was approaching them like they had lost a loved one.
Yeah.
I was like, hey, I'm really sorry about that game. Like I mean, literally, I was like, yeah, could you need a hug? Yeah. So I said to one of them, I was like, what would be the appropriate response for today? Like,
don't bring it up.
It was terrible. Like, don't talk about it. Like, do I talk about it? It literally had some of the same rules as, but he just said, well, yeah.
It depends on the person.
I know.
For me, because I'm not going to, I know Brian Dickman's a big fan of the Bengals, and I like Brian a lot. And Mark is one of my best friends, Mark Snyder. We have an interesting relationship. So I texted him last night after the game ended, and I said, "Go Rams." And he said,
of course you did.
He did not like that. But what he didn't know is that I knew that he was feeding some of the lines Lauren was using to make fun of me.
Oh.
So he helped her write some of the short jokes. And so I said, because I said, "Go Rams." And he goes, "How dare you?" or something like that. And I responded back with, "Oh, I'm sorry. I've just been a Rams fan since I was small, ... Because that's what Lauren said.
Yes.
And he wrote that joke for her. And he goes, "Oh, I felt real bad." I'm like, yeah, go Rams, buddy.
Go Rams.
Yeah.
So
it helped out Lauren.
So it's relationship dependent.
Oh, yeah,
okay.
for sure.
All right. I'm clear on it now.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I felt bad for him. I know how it feels to get your team all the way to the game and then lose. It sucks,
man,
but
and they played so well up until they didn't.
They did,
so yeah. Okay.
So it usually works.
All right. So when we think about preach off, one of the key reasons that we do preach off is because we really believe that our faith is about joy, and that there are elements that we take 100% seriously.
Yeah.
But there's a lot that we don't, and we try not to take ourselves too seriously in it as well. So speaking at 3 services, like what's the most challenging part of some of that? Like what kind of response do you get from people in the lobby? Do you get questions about like, what the heck is this whole thing about?
Yeah, I have a lady who's in one of my groups at Oregon, and she said, like, I'm a little skeptical of it. Like, she's new to the church, and I just gave her the pitch. I was like, it's about having fun. Like, we're trying to have fun, and we will do anything as a church. We used to call it anything short of sin, to get anybody into the door so that we can teach them about Jesus, tell them about how great he is. And even though the preach off is a bunch of goofballs up there goofing around, there is a message. And I had several comments that were texted from Luke and Lauren from the online campus or whatever about people that said like, I think it was after the 9 o'clock, that one lady said like every single message, the 4 mini messages applied to where she was and she needed to hear it. And so it's like, we do it for fun, but man, it does affect people. And if for me, men in particular are a lot harder to get to church than women are. Yeah. And we've seen a huge uptick in men attending during the preach off. Yeah. Because now this year was interesting because I think I don't know what attendance was. I haven't looked at that yet. But I think because there were so many Bengals fans in our area, I'm not sure that I saw as many people. I don't know. But like in years past, we just explode. That's because there's teams that there's not a lot of fans out there. But I don't know. I that's why we do preach off, to reach people. And it's just a great way to reach them. Yeah, it's really the heartbeat of our mission, is to introduce people to Jesus and the life-changing adventure with him. And so we take lots of different approaches to do that. And you talked about like when those mini messages hit, was there a bottom line for you that either you did this weekend or something that stood out, to you in some of those? Like, 'cause that always seems like the toughest part is like, again, the people on that stage love the Word of God. Yeah. You guys are in it every single day. Right. And so there is lots of context. You bring lots of experience with it. So, but to come up with a bottom line that like, and what we call a bottom line is something that somebody can walk out of the auditorium and if they had never read the Bible, they can still have a principle or something that they can take with them to go, this. Yeah. So was there something that stood out to you on that side or just that process of a bottom line? Like, yeah, good question. So that's a hard part. I think the hardest part's attaching a story to the passage. Yeah. But the bottom line parts, we have them. Josh and I wrote up a bunch of them, and so we have them in a document, like sample ones potentially. And so it's funny. I can't hear as much when we sit up there. We can't hear as much of what's going on. I missed a lot of Lauren's jokes. I missed a lot of what Ben or Barb or Josh would say. Yeah. You have to really pay attention because we sit behind the speakers. Yeah. So and so all the audio is being projected away from us. Right. But the one that and I didn't write it. I think it was Josh's bottom line. I gave it when we talked about honoring your father and mother, and it was let the future you thank you. And that's a principle that applies whether or not you're talking about mending relationships with parents that have been broken or strained, or physical exercise, spiritual exercise, like all that stuff. If I had a professor once that said, he was encouraging us to learn the biblical languages. And he said, if you start now, 10 years from now, where will you be if you just do like 10 minutes a day?
Yeah.
Well, you'll be so much further along than you are right now. And unfortunately, I didn't start doing the biblical languages, but it's the same with memorizing scripture or reading the Bible. Like if you set out to read the whole Bible in a year, and which a lot of people do.
Yep.
And it's so daunting at first. And then by the end of the year, like I read the entire Bible.
Yeah.
And you're like, wow, I just did it a little bit at a time, day by day. Let the future you thank you, I think was my favorite bottom line.
I love it. I do think that it does really speak to the principle behind some of those things too, of that God's always putting us in a spot where it's not just about today.
Yeah.
And so it had such broad applications, certainly for what you were teaching on too. But I did hear that one, and it was a fun one. So,
and I was thinking about it too. Like there's so many people I know that have strained relationships, but it's tough to put in the daily work. But it's almost like I try to encourage people at Oregon in particular that small steps spiritually lead to the big progress you want to see.
Yeah.
So
well said.
You can't just people that give up reading the Bible, it's because they want to bite off way more than they're able to chew. Or I'm going to memorize this entire chapter in a week, and then by the time, or it's even physical exercise, or starting a new diet. That's why diets always fail.
Yeah.
Because you're like, I'm going to stop eating all sugar, carbs, blah, blah, blah. And after a week, you're just miserable, and so you give up. Instead of just taking little steps and and spiritually, it's such a good, you're a brand new Christian, and so you get baptized, and then it's like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, and all of a sudden you're like, you start getting burnt out, and then faith, it just is like, it's a chore. Instead of taking your time and day by day making small steps of trust, of obedience, that kind of stuff, it leads to the big progress you want to see.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It does remind me of that, whether it's the 5 minutes every day that starts to just expand. I think God does something in that time. It's like, just start somewhere.
Yeah.
And if you've been on the journey and doing it for a long time, then I think it really is about when does the shift happen where we're always feeding ourselves, but we then are saying, who else is in my life too? Because that is ultimately where so much faith grows and so much trust grows, is when we've got other people around the table. So great. Well, thanks so much for talking through Preach Off and all the craziness that kind of happens with it. And I just wanted to end with, Ben did give us a short message where he talked about worship. He talked about joy.
Yeah.
I had never, so this was the piece for me that was like, wait a minute, what? Is that we're known as the singing faith. Or I can't remember if that was the exact phrase that he used, but essentially it was like, Christians are really, this is the faith that sings.
Yeah.
And I don't know why, but that caused such a pause in me. I was like, wait, are we the only ones who really sing in praise?
It's interesting.
So I didn't know if you had caught that, because I know, like you said, sometimes it's hard to hear, and you guys are prepping for the next thing.
Yeah, I'll probably have to watch that part. We would see the first couple minutes of it. We're backstage, but then we go out into the lobby and take a break or whatever. But yeah, I think that's interesting. I think what people miss about the Christian faith is we have been forever, up until probably pretty recently in history, on the forefront of the arts.
Yes.
All of the arts, and so
they were such an expression of worship, right?
Yeah. So maybe that's interesting.
It was super interesting because he really challenged us to think about how, when we're at a baseball game and Take Me Out to the Ballpark comes on, everybody joins in, or bum bum bum, sweet,
I did hear that part.
And so there are these events in our life where we naturally celebrate. We don't think a thing about jumping in to sing, and yet there are times, and oftentimes when we come into church and we go, hey, this needs, I'm either not going to sing, or I don't participate, or there's some, for some people that it just personally doesn't feel quite right.
Yeah.
And I think he really issued that challenge of what's that about?
Yeah.
What is that about?
Yeah. I think I've been pushing really hard for the past month and a half at our Oregon campus for worship to build a better worship culture, because I think that's what it is culture. The reason why you sing those songs at a baseball game is because that's the baseball culture.
Yes.
Take me out to the ball game, even the national anthem at football games or whatever. You start singing because it's just you don't go, oh, gosh, if I sing "Take Me Out to the Ball Game" in front of this, they're gonna think I'm not good at singing. In that
right.
But at church, you just have this in our church, at least right now, people have that view. It's like, wow, it's kind of weird and whatever, but nobody questions somebody who's freaking out because the Rams just won the Super Bowl.
That's right.
Nuts. And,
that's right.
And of course, Bengals fans, when they lost, like the way that they responded. And so there's a worshipful element that sometimes is missing when we just literally.
Yeah.
And if you can't see me because you're listening to the podcast, I'm just staring blankly at a sound panel behind Marna.
Yeah.
It's dead in a sense.
Yeah. And I think with honoring where everyone is on worship is that it may not be that singing is totally your thing, but what I loved about his challenge is that, are you sure? And have we really given it the chance to be what it needs to be in our life? Not everybody's going to be an expressive, and he's like, hey, I get it. There's limits. Like we don't want to make people feel uncomfortable. But at the same time, that universal sign of surrender is our hands up. And can we take, again, those small steps towards implementing more worship into our lives, because it right sizes our problems and it puts God in the proper perspective.
Yeah, that's good.
And so for me, thinking about us being a faith that sings and has every reason to lift our voices for hallelujah, and in a world that's not filled with much of that was definitely my takeaway from the weekend. So
I think even if that's great. I think even what I've said at Oregon is like, if you're a person who never has sang it, maybe the first step you need to take is just to try and sing today. And it might not be really loud. You might just be like, "Sweet Caroline," blah, blah, blah. And that's the first step, and you realize, wow, nobody hates me because I just opened my mouth and I sang. Or maybe you're the guy that just needs to clap for a little bit, or maybe it's just your first step is to actually be engaged during worship and not thinking about when is this going to be over. Because I've been there and I understand it, but we know how to worship. We're very good at it. We're made to, and it's good for us. So I'll have to go back and watch the rest of that.
Yeah. Amen. It is good for us. So, well, thank you so much, Preach Off Champ. And I know this is what it's like to be here for the rest of the week. Cause you and Josh just kind of walk around like, we won. We won.
I think Ben's going to be avoiding me probably.
So he might be. So if you are listening to this podcast, I hope you've enjoyed kind of our recap of the Preach Off. And here's the thing, you can count on it every Super Bowl weekend. Right. So we have a series, though, coming up that is called Get Me Out of Here. And Get Me Out of Here is very much about the times when we are stuck. Sometimes it's an awkward conversation. Other times it's a situation we want to get out of. Sometimes there are seemingly impossible situations that we just don't see any way out. And so that actually starts this coming weekend and is really a perfect opportunity. I think when I think about the people in my life where, January had 274 days. I think I said this, it's like it's January 275th day. Like, how are we all doing?
February already feels longer.
Right? Already. And so in some ways we're going to be offering hope. And that's what really helps us to work through the areas where we're stuck. But we're going to use the book of Daniel to do it. There's some incredible things in Daniel and lessons that we get to learn together. So I hope that you'll consider inviting someone to Get Me Out of Here. And we've got a really fun Hope It Helps kind of stuff coming. So I don't want to give it away. You'll have to be there this weekend. But as a church, we're going to be stepping into offering hope. And so anything else that we need to hit for this week? I'm trying to think. We've got groups. And so if you have not stepped into a group, that directory is still open. So that's an opportunity to do that.
There's a lot of cool groups out there.
There are some super cool groups. I love looking at what our leaders have put together.
Nice. We have one we have a Bob Ross painting group at Oregon.
I saw that. I want to join. I can't paint.
I've seen it. I don't know that I could, but I've seen some of the people that joined and they're like, I can't paint. And they put out some pretty awesome stuff.
But it just seems so soothing because that was Bob Ross, right? He was just
such a nice guy.
He talked like this. So
happy little tree.
He really was. So, well, church, thank you so much for being a part of the podcast. And we hope that this time has reminded you that you matter and helps you live out that truth throughout the week. We'll see you this weekend.